taking on Superman and watching it come to life, what do you look back on and think was the biggest challenge and that you kind of overcame throughout the experience?
I think the biggest challenge I overcame was probably my own, you know, worry about making sure that I could honor the mythology, Superman mythology, because, you know, it's such a big deal, and it's a big deal to me. It was just making sure that when you walked out of the movie, you're like, man, that was a Superman movie I just saw. And I just saw Superman fly around and fight guys, and I understand the why of him and all that. You know, all the stuff that's, you know, organic to the story, but, you know, once you know what you're up against, it can be daunting.
It feels very organic, especially in Krypton, in that world.
Yeah.
What was the approach to that and making it look that way?
Yeah, I really wanted the movie to feel like it was made by hand, that there was a real, like, tactile, physical aspect to the movie, because I just feel like that physical handmade quality helped to make, you know, this intimate relationship with Superman more you're more connected. I felt like you're more, it doesn't feel like some glossy, super slick, you know, grainless, like just window into some fake world. It really, in a weird way, the convention of, it's funny that it's like ironic now, but this shooting the movie on film and having it have that sort of, you know, tactile quality,
yeah.
It really makes it feel like in a weird way, it's slightly retro, the movie, because it has like it's a big cinema movie, right?
Yeah.
Big anamorphic movie, shot on film, feels like a film, but also it does have that kind of physical, tactile kind of realness to it that, even though there's a filter on it, which is our own perception of what reality is. I think that the actual process enhances that.
How do you connect visually, create this visually about a guy who can fly, but keep it as a character story?
Okay, I see what you're saying. Yeah. I think that the way you have to approach it is you have to have the two things be non-exclusive, right? Mm-hmm. You've got to be able to, within the same, and it's really just it's a product of how you see the movie. But for instance, we knew that this scene between Kevin and the kid or whatever would be these handheld sequences, back of a pickup truck, cornfield, sunset, beautiful, right? But still, it's like this real moment. Or in the basement with the scout ship, whatever it is. So the way that translates to the flying and those sequences, I said, okay, we filmed the movie in a kind of a handheld way.
Yeah.
Right? It's not shaky handheld, but it's the cameras, there's a person,
it's very quick.
It's alive.
Yeah.
So when we filmed Supes flying, I said, okay, these shots would be hard to do that way, right? That means that there's someone on a rig somehow flying in front of Superman, trying to film him. I want to feel that in the photography. So what we did is, when we filmed Superman fighting or flying, we really tried to approach it philosophically. Is like, where would the camera be? How would we shoot this? Even if it's a whole full CG shot, we'd be like, where would the camera be? How, like, would we be in a helicopter? Would we be on a platform? How would we shoot it? And so that either shakiness of the camera or difficulty in getting the shot or focus or all those things, those are all translated into the CG sort of point of view, so that the same stuff that's giving you the emotion of feeling like you're really there because like it's an observer is also helping to create the energy in the fight sequences and the flying sequences.
When I first saw the trailer and saw Henry Cavill, I thought, no way, he's not gonna. I didn't feel right. Now I'm 100% changed. What was it that you saw in him that you knew right away?
I guess for me, you know, when I saw him in the suit, in the Christopher Reeve suit that we put him in the first time, the spandex, and, you know, it wasn't a joke. Like, it literally wasn't a joke. If anyone else I know, and I know some fit dudes, if anyone else I know put that costume on, it's literally a joke. Right? Yeah. It's like, really? What costume party are you going to? Like, that's ridiculous. Don't take that off. Or, like, awesome, you're pretending to be Superman. He literally put the costume on and we literally said, like, that guy's not dressed up like Superman.
Yeah.
He's like Superman. It's like a different thing. You can't explain it. It's funny because when he walked out, you know, we're like all these crusty grips because we were going to film test it, right?
Yeah,
so it's
yeah.
like, had the cameras ready, comes out of the trailer, no one laughed, no one, you know, was like completely heart attack serious, like, oh, there's Superman, like, fuck yeah.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's just a different thing, you know, and we were all like, okay, that's your guy.
Nolan has created a brand new world with the superhero movie, a trilogy. Do you see yourself going with this and doing a trilogy of Superman and going to that level?
It really has a lot to do with, like, you know, we try to not, what do you say? Like, we really wanted to focus 100% on this film, make sure it was awesome. And look, I'd be naive to say that, like, our intent was only to make one movie.
Yeah.
But we haven't really planned out, like, what we really shot all our bullets, you know, and we did it on purpose because, you know, philosophically, I believe that, you know, you don't ever want to save anything.
Yeah, yeah.
Even if you feel like there might be a sequel, you should just dump it all. And then your problem then becomes, which is an Uptown problem, what do we do now?
Yeah, yeah.
If that day comes, you're saying like, well, I put all the ideas in the movie. Now what do I do?
Yeah.
That's your problem, and that's a great problem to have because you're basically saying that you achieved what you meant to achieve, and now you're having to go forward. And so, if that were to happen, you know, David and I have talked about, you know, roughly what we would do, but we're still trying to figure it out.
Are you a fan of like comics? Is there a villain that you'd like to maybe look into at some point?
Oh, you mean in the Superman universe, other than Zod?
Yeah.
I am a fan of. I mean, look, there's some obvious guys that would jump to mind immediately based on even what we put in the movie.
I know, right?
So I won't say.
We won't spoil that.
But I think you get a sense of it.
First of all, congratulations. I love this performance. I've got to ask though, looking into this character, what did you find? What did you look at the comic books? Did you look at Terrence Stamp? How did you find him?
Well, I didn't really look at the comic books that much. When I got the part, they gave me a present, the DC Comics book that came out recently. It's
okay.
This giant book that weighs a ton. I looked through that, and I mean, that was more just fun than anything.
Yeah.
And, you know, I saw the Terrence Stamp performance when I was a kid, and I have a reverence for it. You know, it really made an impact on me when I saw it, but I didn't go back and see it again.
Yeah.
I was kind of excited to just really use my imagination more than anything. It's such a... It's easy to forget when you're watching it because it's so intense, but it's really just playing, you know, we're playing.
Yeah.
It's like boys playing in the backyard, you know, just acting like, you know, superheroes, supervillains. You know. So, I mean, the one thing I thought about going into it is the fact that he's a general, you know, and what that means, you know, being a general, and how hard it is to be a general. It's not easy. It's a lot of responsibility. It's a lot of stress, and he's seen terrible things happen to his planet, and it's been very traumatic for him. So, more than just being like mean or nasty or angry, he's kind of been traumatized in his own way.
You kind of humanize this character, and I think with this, there's a lot of times your character talks about, my people are killed, I'm trying to save my people. Does that make it easier to kind of make him almost a likable villain?
I mean, I suppose. I mean, ultimately, it's up to the audience. I mean, I'm sure there's some people in the audience who are like, I don't care what happened to you, you know, you can't mess with Earth. This is our house, you know.
Damn right.
You know, so, I mean, there's only so much you can do. I mean, at the end of the day, he's the antagonist of the movie. But, I mean, what I do think is interesting with the Superman story is that more than like a good guy, bad guy dilemma, it's this figure that's caught between two civilizations. You know, Cal's caught between Earth and Krypton, and you know, there are people on Earth that are would be just as happy to try and tie Cal up and put him in a jail cell and torment him just as much as anybody from Krypton would. I mean, truthfully, nobody on Krypton, Zod doesn't really want to mess with Superman at all until Superman disobeys him. You know?
No, I've got to say, I don't remember ever seeing a film with you where you had to do as much fighting as you do in this.
Yeah.
Can you talk about how you approach that? What was it like doing with the fight choreography and doing those scenes?
Well, it was very exciting, actually. Zach has somebody he's been working with for a long time, Damon, stunt coordinator, who's very versed in a variety of styles of combat, and has an excellent team around him that trained us for months leading up to the shooting. And all of the sequences, all of the combat sequences you see in the film were rehearsed. I mean, we probably ran them at least 100 times before we ever did them in front of the camera. So, and you know, there's obviously a lot of augmentation going on with the visual effects and the computer stuff afterwards. But I mean, we could really do it. Like, we could really do it. I mean, ultimately, we weren't hurting each other. It was a dance more than anything. But we weren't faking it.
I think with a role like this, especially in the superhero world, there's almost something Shakespearean about these villains. And I think that's kind of, I kind of got a little bit of a Macbeth kind of that with Zod. And I knew you're very familiar with Shakespeare.
Yeah, with the theater, yeah.
Do you think that kind of helped you in kind of finding that balance?
Yeah, I mean, I can't say how much I really ultimately drew on that, but yeah, I mean, there's a reason that that this story, this kind of a story, has survived so many centuries.
Yeah.
It's such a crucial component to our culture, our mythology. The idea of these thwarted kings or generals, as it may be, and but yeah, I wasn't like in my trailer running sonnets or anything like that.
That would have been kind of cool, though.
Yeah.
Have you seen your dolls? Have you gotten to check
out
your action figures? How do you feel about that?
They're really pretty extraordinary. Particularly, there's one that's like a statue. It's like this high, collector's item.
Yeah.
It's like it could be in a museum quality.
It could.
Yeah. So yeah, that's just totally freaky. I mean, apparently they're already selling them.
Yeah, no, they're in stores. Yeah.
They're like selling out or something. So.
Yeah. Well, I think it's such a great build, and I think that people are going to want, people are going to want that, and they're going to want the Superman dolls to battle it out.
Yeah, battle it out. Yeah.
There's something really smart about this film. As I was watching it, I kind of felt like, well, I don't think this is insulting my intelligence by being involved in it.
Yeah.
And I think the cast is a big part of that. And the scenes with you and Russell Crowe, what was that like to work with him? How is he to... Because I've met him. He's a great guy.
Yeah.
Seems like that's a lot of intensity in one room.
Yeah. Right there. Well, I really learned a lot from working with him. I just loved watching him. Yeah. A lot of times I'd be in a scene with him, and particularly if if it was his close-up or I was off camera, he's just so intelligent, and he's been doing it such a long time. I would watch little things he would do that would convey so much with so much subtlety. That was just kind of a real, it was a job and a lesson at the same time. It was really cool.
What's your favorite moment? What is the best thing for you? What did you learn from this, stepping out of the indies and jumping into this massive world?
Well, that you can still tell great stories that have a lot of detail and a lot of heart to them, and that you can still have really intricate, complex relationships, even in the context of just, you know, larger studio picture.
No.
Because what it boiled down to when we're in front of those green screens is just your imagination and the person that you're working with.
First of all, I want to talk about, it seems like a hard enough job to bring Batman to life, as you did. What was the challenge? Was it easier?
A lot of us brought Batman to life. First and foremost, Chris, but go on.
But what about with this character? What about Man of Steel, Superman?
I think Superman's harder. I mean, I think I remember someone asking me in the press junket for Batman Begins whether or not I'd ever want to take a crack at Superman, and at the time I said no. I didn't have an affinity, or as close an affinity for the character as I had for Batman, and I think he's inherently harder because he's an alien, because he comes from another world, because he doesn't seemingly have as many vulnerabilities. It was a daunting task and a terrifying task. I remember, you know, I had a basic pitch and we got the deal, you know, to do it, and I remember sitting down at my computer and I was procrastinating. It was time to actually start writing the script, and I thought, oh my God, I don't know if I can do this. And the first scene I wrote was the scene in which Jor-El and Laura give their baby up. And I just said, I'm going to write it from the perspective of two parents literally having to give their newborn child away and say goodbye to him. They have to say hello and goodbye in the same scene. And I wrote that, and I said, I'm just going to forget the fact that they're aliens and pretend as if it were me doing this, because my son was born, you know, during this film. And I thought, and so I wrote this scene, and, you know, I got emotionally choked up, and then I thought, okay, now I can do this. I'm just going to forget that they're aliens and forget that he's this iconographic character and try to relate to him as much as I can from my own personal experiences.
What is your proudest scene, the one scene that really, besides obviously the most personal scene, maybe the leaving the child, what is the one scene that really you think works more than anything, at least you're the most proud of?
I think I'm most proud of probably the scenes between Clark and Jonathan Kent. Those are the ones that really touched me. Those are the ones that I related to a lot because I'm also a stepfather. Yeah. And a lot of those scenes were informed by conversations that I had, you know, with my stepson.
Wow.
Those are the ones I remember being in the field when we were shooting the scene in which Jonathan has to tell his son, you know, essentially he's not from Earth. And that was an incredibly moving experience for me. We shot it in Illinois, about 3 hours from where I'd grown up, in a field very similar to the kinds of fields that I played in when I was a kid. And just to have Kevin Costner sort of say these words and then come up to me afterwards and say, hey, was that okay? How did that work for you? Wow, what, are you kidding me? Yeah, that worked great.
Now, was this always planned to be a reintroduction to the character, or because it's been through so many gestations with Smallville or Superman?
It was. I mean, what Chris and I decided early on with Batman Begins is that we had to approach the Batman mythology as if no other films had existed, because I think then you get in a trap, and some of the people today have acknowledge that, and Zack has talked about that. We had to do the same thing with Superman. We had to pretend that none of the films had ever existed because, you know, we were aware of the fact that a large percentage of our audience might not have seen the Donner films, or Lois and Clark, you know, the show, you know, in the 80s or things like that. And
tried to forget about that one myself.
You know, but various people have their own iteration of who Superman is. You know, their Superman, and I think that if you try to do an homage, or you try to just assume that the audience knows this or that, I think it can be, there can be a lot of pitfalls with that approach.
In looking back and doing the research and finding the way to start it, what was the biggest help for you, going back to the comics, and specifically which incarnation?
It wasn't the comic books. One of the things,
really?
I mean, it started with the comic books, but then I thought, well, what references were Siegel and Schuster drawing upon when they created Superman in whenever it was, 37 or 38, 36. So I read some early interviews with them back in the 70s, and they talked about the New Testament and the Old Testament, and one of them referenced Beowulf and Gilgamesh, and there was an old Philip Wiley novel called Gladiator, and so I said, okay, fine. I'm going to try to roll back the clock and get back to the original DNA of where this character came from.
Obviously, you were going to be aware that they're going to make, oh, Dark Knight, oh, you guys are doing the same thing. Although it's really not. Can you explain why it's so different?
Well, I think there was an assumption that because the Dark Knight trilogy was gritty, that we would also make the Superman film gritty.
Yeah.
And Chris likes to use the word relatable, which I think is probably a better and more useful word than more real or realistic.
Yeah.
We tried to make Superman relatable, and relatable doesn't necessarily mean grim and gritty.
Yeah.
It just means relatable. So it just means you can't take things for granted. You can't just assume, oh, he comes from another planet and everyone accepts that. So you have to take everything at face value. He's an alien. The fact that he exists means that there's intelligent life in the universe. That's a big deal. And so you have to kind of follow that back to its logical conclusion.
Well, also the idea that he is special and this world tends to eat its special alive.
He is special and he is different, and he would be special even if he had no superpowers.
Mm-hmm. With Justice League, do you feel pressure to win writing this, to say, oh, well, I've got to prepare for that? Or was it all simply, no, I'm telling this story?
The pressure was this story, and believe me, reinventing Superman was pressure enough.
Yeah.
Chris was gracious enough to invite me onto the Batman films and help him reinvent Batman, and trust me, reinventing Superman was an incredibly daunting task. And if I'd never done anything in my career but work on the Batman films, that would have been enough. And working on Superman 2, that would have been enough. So as for the future, we just want this film to come out. It's 2 weeks away. I've been working on it for 4 years, and we just want people, we hope people respond to it in the way that we're hoping they will.